Hello students, in this video you will learn about functions in Python. The topics that we are going to cover in this session are the types of function in Python, how to write a user-defined function, what are parameters and arguments, what are the three types of arguments and how we can combine them in a function, then returning values from a function, and the scope of variables, then mutable and immutable arguments that are passed in a function. These are the topics that are going to be discussed in this function. A function is a piece of code that acts on data and gives a result. For example, if you want to repeat a particular code, say some particular usage, you want to do very often in a particular project. In that case, you need not repeat the code every time you need to do it. Instead, write that piece of code as a function and save it with a name and call that name whenever you want to do that functionality. That piece of code is called as a function. A function is a piece of code which is reserved like a ready-made product. Whenever you want to execute that code, you need to call that function. Okay, so a function can perform a particular functionality. Say for example, to find the answer of a particular expression or something like that. Have arguments if needed. We'll see what arguments are, and a function can return a result. Of course, when you do some process, you get a result. Okay, next, what are the advantages of using a function? You can handle a program easily when a function is divided into modules. When a program is divided into modules, every module is called as a function where you can easily correct errors. So it becomes very easy to handle programs. Reduces the size of program. That is what I told you. Instead of repeating the code, it reduces the repeated statements. You need to do it only once. Ambiguity can be reduced. Again, repeat the same set of statements in your project, you just give it once, so ambiguity gets reduced. It makes the program modular. You divide your entire program into modules, so the program is also understandable by anyone who looks into it. Now let us get into the types of functions in Python. The first type are the built-in functions which we are already using. The len function, input function, type function, these are all the functions that are ready to use anytime. You need not use or import any specific module for using these functions. These are all built-in and readily available in Python for anytime use. The second kind of functions are the functions that are defined inside modules. For example, you have a random module. You can use that module and you have methods called randint, randrange, which can be used to generate random numbers. In this process, you have to import the module first and then use the method inside the module. Right? So that is the second kind of functions. So you would have already used programs, written programs using the functions that are inside modules. We have mean, median, mode functions inside the statistic module, sine, cos, tan, floor, square root, and all these functions inside the math module. The last type are the user-defined functions which are defined by the programmer. According to your use, you can customize your code. So you can write a piece of code, give it a name and call the function whenever needed. These kind of functions are called user-defined functions. Actually in this code, in this session further, we are going to learn about these user-defined functions only because we already know how to use built-in functions and the function inside modules. Now, how to write a user-defined function? What is the syntax? Syntax is the structure which has to be followed while writing the code, right? A function should start with the keyword def in small letters, leave a space, give a name for the function. How should you name a function? The rule is how you give the rules for identifiers. That is what the name should be given. The name should be followed like how you do it while naming a variable. So function name is also the same. It should not contain any special characters, no space allowed and all that. Okay, and you give an open close bracket and put a colon. That is compulsory because inside the function we give a piece of code which is a block. It has to be indented. So give a colon and all the statements inside the function needs to be given after an indentation. The last statement of the function is the return value. That is the answer that you have found out using this method. That value or the variable should be returned. That should be given as the last statement. Okay. Now let us see an example of how to write a function. Okay. See, let us write a function to find the sum of two numbers. Okay. So you should start a function definition using the keyword def. Def sum of a comma b. Say I'm going to find the sum of two numbers. How should you define the variable? Put a colon. This is the function header. You call this statement as the function header. How should the function header be? Give a def statement, leave a space, name of the function, open close bracket, colon. With an open close bracket, the variables that are to be used inside the function. Now what am I going to do? Find the sum of these two numbers and give back the answer. What is the purpose of this function? To find the sum. So that sum you have to return back. Give it back. So that C, which is the sum, should be returned. Now, how to run this program? If you simply write these 3 lines of coding, it is not enough. You have to call the function by its name. If you just define a function, your coding will not work. You have to call the function by its name. So how will you call this function? You have to write sum of and give 2 values to add. Now, let me say sum of 100, 52. This is how you should call the function. Sum of 100, 52. It should not be indented. It should be straight. Now, when I call sum of 100, 52, the first value which you pass will be assigned to the first variable. The second value will be assigned to the second variable. The answer will be, the numbers will be added and put it back to C, and C is returned. The C value is returned in this place. The value of C is substituted here. So in this place 152 is received. Now what happens to this 162? When you return something, there should be something to hold the answer. So what should you give to hold the answer? There are 2 things that you can do. Either you give a print command where the answer will be directly printed, or you give a variable which will hold the value. So for returning a value, you should have a variable ready here to get the value, to receive the value. If you don't want this variable, if you think, why should I waste a variable in the memory? So let me directly print it, then no problem. Just give print sum of 100, 52. Right? Now let us see some user-defined functions and how to execute that in Python. I'll show you how to write a user-defined function in Python and execute it. See, let us write a function to find the sum and difference. So def sum a comma b colon. Once you press enter, it will automatically indent it. C is equal to a plus b, return C. Next, I'm going to write another function difference to find the difference of 2 numbers. Colon, difference is equal to a minus b, return D. Now, these are just function definitions. I'll save and show you what happens. If you simply run this program, nothing will happen because we are not calling the function. See, nothing is there in the output because we just have given the function definition. In order to execute this function, you have to call this function by its name. Sum of, not a comma b, give a value 100, 200. Then difference of 10, 20. Now, if you simply call this sum and call the difference again, sum will get executed, value will be returned, but you don't have any placeholder to hold the returned value. So what happens again? Nothing happens. Because you haven't printed anything, you haven't received the value. So give an answer that will hold the value. Give another answer 1. I've used 2 variables to hold the value, and then print answer comma answer 1. Now the first answer is 100 plus 200, which is 300. Then 10 minus 20, which is minus 10. Either you can do this, or instead of holding it in a variable, you can directly print the output. Instead of holding it, you can simply give print. So what happens when you call a function, when you say sum of 100 comma 200, this line, when the computer sees this line, it will jump to this place, calculate the answer, and when it encounters the statement return C, it will return to the same place where the function is called, and this will be replaced by the return value. What is the return value? 300 will be assigned here. So it will be printed on the screen. So where you call the function, that will be replaced by the return value. Return value. Suppose you don't return anything, you just print. It is also possible. It is not compulsory that you have to return a answer. You can simply print the answer. So let us see what happens. When you try to print this, the function is not returning any value, but you have given a placeholder. You want something to be returned. So what happens? Let us see. See, there is a value called none. Why? The default return value of a function is none. So even if you don't return anything, Python automatically returns a default value called none. So if you return it, that value will get returned. If you don't return anything, none will get returned. Okay, fine. Let us see what are arguments or parameters. The actual arguments and the formal parameters are commonly used terms while doing functions. Now taking the example of the program which we wrote just now, look at this one. This 100 comma 200, these are called as actual arguments. Actual arguments are these are values actually. So let me say x is equal to 100, y is equal to 200. Now, when you use x, y here, what happens? X and y that are used in the function call statement are called as actual arguments. The value of x is transferred to a, the value of y is transferred to b. So this a and b which are given in the function header statement, these are called formal arguments. Arguments, parameters, you can use any word. Both mean the same. Arguments or parameters both mean the same. But the difference is actual, formal. What is actual? The one that is used in the function call. The one that is used in the header statement, this AB, all these are called formal. This is actual, this is formal. Okay, fine. These are arguments used while calling or invoking a function. Formal parameters are parameters used in the function header. So you can use the term arguments or parameters for any kind of variable. You can either say actual arguments or you can say actual parameters. Both mean the same. But actual and formal are different. Arguments and parameters mean the same. Next, look at this program which we wrote just now. This is a function definition statement for the method called sum, and we have written 2 lines. So these 2 lines belong to sum function. These 2 lines belong to difference function, diff function. Now, what about these 4 lines? These 4 lines are the main program which are going to get executed by the computer first. So Python will first look for the main statements that are written. How do you identify main statements? Look at the indentation given in this program. Apart from these def statements, the ones that are indented to the leftmost corner, these are the main program. lines that make up the main program. So these statements are first executed. Okay, so let us see what happens. The top level statements in a program is called a main program, which are saved in a variable called underscore main underscore, that is double underscore here. Python uses a special variable called name. Whenever Python executes a module, it will store the name in a variable called underscore name underscore. So in this case, underscore main underscore will be saved inside the name variable. Okay. You may be asked about these two in 1 mark questions. You have to remember. Python uses a special variable called underscore name underscore to store this name. What does this name contain? This underscore main underscore is the set of lines which are going to get executed first. Then this I told you, the default return value of a function is none. Next, we just saw a return value here saying return D. This is a single variable which is returned. Sometimes when I say return A, B, C, D, when you return more than one variable, then the data type which is returned is a tuple. Okay, if you catch the data type and try to print, it will show tuple. So when a function returns more than one value, the return data type is a tuple. Okay, then the return statement should be the last statement in a function. The statements below that are skipped and control returns to the main program. What do you mean by that? Here I've given return D. After that, I'll print a statement called thank you. Now let us see what happens. I'll run this program. It just says 300, none and -10, but the thank you statement is not getting printed. Why? A function, when it encounters the return statement, will quickly jump back to the place where it was called. It will not see what are the lines given below that. That's why you should always give the return statement as the last line of a function. Of course, it won't result in any error, but the problem is it will not look at the program, lines which are given below that. See, now that line thank you gets printed. Why? Because I've given that above the return statement. So that is not a problem. Right? Now, let us see the order of execution of statements while using a function in a Python program. First, all function definition statements are executed first, not the statements inside the function. Then the main statements are executed line by line. When a function call statement is encountered, the execution transfers or jumps to the function definition. After that, all the statements inside the function are executed. When the return statement is encountered, the execution comes back to the main function. I'll explain you with this example. Now, how are these lines getting executed? First, this function definition will be executed by Python, but it will not enter the next two lines. After that, it comes to the next def statement. This is the second line which will be executed, but nothing will happen. It will just recognize, okay, diff is a function, and then jump to the main program. What is the third line which will get executed? X is equal to 100. Then y is equal to 200. Then it will come to this statement. And what is given? First go to the innermost function. You should not look at print statement first. What is the innermost statement? Sum of x comma y. This is called as function call. When a function is called or invoked, it will jump to the function statement here. Why does it do this? This x is transferred to A, y is transferred to B. What is the xy value? 100 and 200 is given to A and B. After the function is called, it runs into the function. So what happens? C is equal to A plus B, then print C. Once this gets over, the function gets over, it comes back to the line where the function is called. And this is replaced by the return value. Now in this program there is no return value, so none will get printed. Next it will move on to the next line, and here what is the function called? Diff of 10 comma 20. So again Python control will jump to diff function. One diff function, it will enter into the function now, then execute these lines, whatever command is given here. Once return statement is given, it will jump back to the place where the function was called. And the return value will be replaced in this place. Here, for example, minus 10 is the answer. So diff of 10 comma 20 is replaced by minus 10. So minus 10 will get printed on the screen. So if you are asked, write the lines according to the order of execution. Write the line numbers. How does this program get executed? In case you are getting a question like this, you will write this line first, line number 1, then line number 4, then line number say 8, not 8, 9, line number 9, then 10, then 11. And from 11, it jumps back to 1 again. Then line number 2, then line number 3. After that, it comes to line number 11 again because it has to print this answer. Then line 12, and here it goes to line 4, then line 5, line 6, line 7, and comes back to line 12. Provided there is no space, then the line numbers will be correct. Okay. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it gets okay. So this is how the order of execution is done while a function is called in Python. Okay. Now, what are the different ways of calling a function? We just saw some examples where first I gave add of 10 comma 20. So you have the provision of directly passing the value as an argument. So 10 will be passed to the first variable and 20 will be passed to the second variable, and the function will get executed. Sometimes you may get a, b value from the user. You can give an input statement and receive values from the user. In that case, you can pass the variables as arguments. Or you can have a combination. You can have one variable name and one value. You can have one value or one variable, or it may be a combination or any way. Not necessarily that. You can also have an expression. What happens when you give an expression? This expression gets evaluated. 2 into 3, 6 minus 5 is 1. So 1 comma a power b, say 2 power 3, 8. So add of 1 comma 8. So what happens when you pass an expression as a variable instead of a variable? The expression is computed and the value is passed as an argument. So there is nothing wrong in using any of these types while calling or invoking a function. Next, about returning values. So I gave you two examples of functions. One function returned a value and one function simply printed a value. There was no return statement at all. It is possible to write a function with or without return statements. So what happens? The functions returning some value are called non-void functions. What is void? Empty. Something which there is nothing, which means nothing. So if it is returning something, it is not empty. So it is called non-void. But functions which does not return, which are empty, are called void functions. So look at this function, def high. So high is the name of the function. What do I do here? Just simply printing 2-3 statements here and call this function. This function does not have a return statement. So this kind of a function is called as a void function, or you can call it as a non-fruitful function. But in this case, void function with arguments. Here there are no arguments. Here there are some arguments to be passed. But instead of returning the answer, I am printing the answer directly inside the function. So it is your style of programming, your requirement. According to the requirement or the question, you have to decide whether you're going to pass the arguments or not, whether you're going to return a value or not. It depends on the question. Okay. Now look at this. Non-void function without arguments. Here I ask the user to enter a name and simply return welcome name. If you type Anu, welcome Anu will be printed on the screen. And here there is a non-void function with arguments. So you can have a different combination. You can use arguments, you need not use them. You can return values or arguments, or you need not return values or arguments. Nothing is wrong. Okay, depends on the question which is asked. Now I also told you can return more than one value. So look at this program, swap a, b, c. I'm just giving some different answers. I mean twice of the variable I'm assigning to the variables and returning a comma b comma c. So what happens here? swap of 10, 20, 30 is called, and the return value is assigned to x. But when there are more than one value, this x become a tuple. This x becomes a tuple. So x of 0 will give the first value of the tuple, x of 1 will return second value, x of 2 will return the third value. What is the first value? 10 plus 10, 20, then 40, then 60 will be printed on the screen. So regarding return values, you need not necessarily return a single value, you can return more than one values, which becomes a tuple. Okay, that is an important 1 mark question. The return data type when more than one value is returned is called as a tuple. Okay, so this is a sample program. Just wanted to redefine the terms, tell you the terms. Def add of x comma y. What does the word def indicate? This statement is the function header. These two statements are the function statements, and the remaining 4 lines belong to main program. Double underscore main double underscore. Where is this double underscore main double underscore saved? It is saved inside a variable called name underscore name underscore. Okay. So lines 4, 5, 6, 7 belong to main. Okay. And this add of a comma b is the function call statement or the invoke statement. So these are terms which you have to remember. Now again, actual parameters and formal parameters. What did I tell you? The variables that are used in the function call statement are called as actual parameters. The function variables that are used in the function header are called as formal parameters. So you may be given a code like this and asked to write, give the name of the formal parameters. Which line indicates the function definition? Which line is the function called? All these things you may be asked. So you must know the terminologies. Next, we've been discussing about the arguments. Regarding arguments, we have some types of arguments which you should know. The first important type are the positional or required arguments. That is the compulsory arguments which we saw just now. A, comma, B, comma, C. All these things are called as positional arguments that are also called as required. Why do you require? You cannot skip that. Let me show you this example. Sum of x comma y. If I remove this y from here and run this program, it says missing one required positional argument. What do you mean by positional argument? These are compulsory arguments. A comma B. A value must be passed without fail. If you skip the value, it will cause an error. That's why they are called as positional arguments. Positional arguments are the arguments which must be passed while calling the function. Right? The arguments that are mandatory and are passed in the given order. You have to give in the correct order. A, B, C, D. That respective values should be given in the same order. Are called positional or required arguments. So when it comes def sum of A, B, C, D, you have to give 4 values. You cannot skip any one of these. Why? Because they are compulsory or positional arguments, otherwise called as required arguments. The next kind of arguments which can be used in a function, they are called as default arguments. What are default arguments? Say for example, you do a particular program where the user is given an option where they can skip the C, D values. A, B values are compulsory, C, D are not compulsory. So if the user skips C, D option, the default value is assigned as 10, 5. Okay, these arguments can be skipped during a function call. In that case, the default value is assigned for a variable. I will show you an example. See, sum of 5, 7. So what happens during the function call? 5 is assigned to A, 7 is assigned to B. Now I have skipped C and D. Why? Because they are default arguments. You have the option to skip them. But what happens to C and D? This value will be taken by default. That's why they are called as default values. Then keyword or named arguments. I will show you first. Let me explain you with an example and then tell you what are keyword arguments. Now, Let me give a new example of simple interest program. Say def simple interest P comma R comma T, principal comma rate of interest comma term, where I will declare the term as 5 years. Say if the user does not enter the term, I will take it as 5 years. Now I will return the answer. What is the formula? PRT by 100. This is simple interest formula. Now I will ask the user to enter the principal, int of input, then rate of interest, which is again, say I'll consider it as integer, then call the function print simple interest of P comma R. I simply close the function call. Why? Because I'm not giving any term answer now. A second time I will call the same function with values, comma 2 years. So I'm going to give 2 years. So what happens in this case and what happens in this case? In this place, I'm calling the simple interest program by passing values for the positional arguments. What are positional arguments? P and R are positional arguments. So compulsorily you have to give the values. But what happened to default? I have skipped that. So first time PR is taken what I give and T is taken as 5. But in this line, PR is taken as what I gave them and 2 is passed to T instead of 5. If you give the value, that value will be considered. If you don't give the value, the default value is considered. Now let us run this program and check the answer. So first I'll give 1000 rupees as the or 10,000 rupees as the principal, then 10% interest. See, 5000 is the first function, function call where I gave 5 as the default value. So it gave 5000 as the simple interest. The second one I have passed 2 as the value. So it is given answer 2000 as the interest. So this is how a default variable is used. So if a default value is skipped, no problem. If you have not skipped, this value will be taken instead of default value. So this P and R cannot be skipped. Why? Because they are positional arguments. Now, let us see. I will consider principal as 5000, rate of interest as say 5% and the term as 3 years. Now, what will happen? Let me remove everything. So what will happen for the first time when I call simple interest? The interest is calculated for 5000 rupees, 5% and for 3 years. Let us check if it happens. So first it asks for a value because I have given an input statement. So first time it is calculated for the given values. First time it calculates for the default values because I didn't pass. Second time it is calculated for PR and T is given as 2. Now I want to execute this program by skipping this P and R. Only T value I should pass. If I simply give say the term 10 years, I want to find the simple interest for 10 years of term. But the principal and interest, I want to use the default value. Now, when you pass a number 10, what will happen? This 10 will be considered for the first variable. But whereas I want to pass this 10 as the value for T and skip these two. In that case, I am forced to mention for which argument I am giving this 10. So I will say T is equal to 10. So what happens here when I call the simple interest function? P value is taken as 5000, R value is taken as 5, T value is alone given as 10. So when I call a function, when I mention a value for a variable along with its name, that is called as a named argument or keyword argument. When you call a function, passing a value along with its name by mentioning its name is called as a keyword argument. You can also pass another value here, say R is equal to 2%. You can also change the order. Why? Because I've clearly mentioned what variable I'm giving the value. So you also have the choice of changing the order while using keyword arguments. Okay. So T value I've given, it will be passed to this place. R value I've given, it will be passed to this place. I have skipped P. So P is taken as the default, which is 5000. So this is how the program gets executed. Okay. I hope you understood the kinds of arguments. So generally the order of arguments should be the same as parameters. In case we want to change the order of passing arguments or to pass only selected default variables, we can pass the values by mentioning the names. This is what we saw just now. So these kind of arguments are keyword or named arguments. Next, while declaring a combination of positional arguments and default arguments, you have a rule stating that the positional argument should be given in the left side and the default arguments should be given in the right side. So this is the correct way of mentioning. Suppose you want to give default values for A and B should be given in the right hand side. So whatever is the default should come in the right side, compulsory should come in the left side. So this is correct. Look at the second one. This is also correct. Why? A is positional argument. B, C, D are default argument. So this is correct. But look at this. In this case, A, B default arguments are given in the left side. This is wrong. Actually, this should be given as def sum of C, D, A equal to 10, B equal to 5. So these default arguments should be pushed in this place to the right side. Okay. Now, how are the scope of variables defined? That is how the program resolves the value of a variable. See, if you look at this program, you have a variable called P here. You have another variable called P here. But this P is different and this P is different. Why? The variables that are used in the main program are called as global variables. The variables that are used inside a function are called as local variables. The name of the local variables and the name of the global variables are treated differently. Even if they are same, they are stored in different places. In the memory, they are allocated different places to be stored. So, you have two different scopes called local scope and global scope. Actually, when you call a variable and say print A, computer first finds if there is a value inside a local area. If it is not there, then it searches in the global area. It also, the LEGB rule is followed to resolve the value. LEGB stands for local, enclosing, global and built-in. What is enclosing? Sometimes you have a function within a function, like a nested function. So that kind of a variable which is declared inside the calling function, it's called as enclosing scope. But let us skip this because we don't have this in our syllabus. Same way, built-in scope, that is declared in a built-in package. So let us skip these two things and just concentrate on local scope and global scope. A name declared in the top level segment of a program will have global scope. So what is the scope? What does the word global mean? The global variable can be used inside any function given in the program. Suppose you give A is equal to 10. Inside any function you can say print A. The global variable can be recognized inside any function. But local scope, a variable declared inside a function, can be used only within that function. So let me show you an example. Def A. Here I use a variable called x. And here in the main program, I use a variable called A and try to print A here. And in this place, I print x. Fun. Now, look at this program. Function, fun is a function. Inside fun, we have a variable called x. This x is a local variable. If you try to print x here, it will result in an error. Why? Locals are used only within that function. They are recognized only within that function. If you try to print it outside, it will cause an error. See, name x is not defined. But here, actually it has printed 100. In this place A gets printed, but when it enters here and tries to print the next one, it doesn't get printed. Now I try to print A here. That will not be a problem. Why? Because A is a global variable, so you can print that very well. See, 100 gets printed easily. Oh, I didn't call that function. See, 100, 10, 100. So what happens here? Look at this function. First A is assigned 100, then print A. A will get printed, that is 100 gets printed on the screen. Then function is called, then print x, 10 is printed. Then print A. A is not declared anywhere inside a function, so it is not available in local area. Then Python searches in the global area. Yes, here it finds 100 and then it gets printed. Suppose you have another function called fun2 where you try to print A. This will also get printed. Fun2. I will call fun2 also. Let me not print it here. See, 100, 100. What happened? The global variable is recognized inside these two functions, but a local variable is not recognized outside the function. So this is the difference between local and global variable. Okay. See, this is how memory is allocated. See, look at this example. Def sum of a comma b, print a plus b. Def diff of a comma b, print a minus b. A is equal to 10, b is equal to 20, sum of 5 comma 3. I have given a program here. Now observe this program carefully. There are two variables globally called AB. There are two local variables AB inside sum, two local variables AB inside diff. Now there are three sets of A's and B's used in this program, but all the three A's and B's are treated differently. This is how it is stored inside the memory. Global A and B is allotted a separate place. Local of sum AB is differently saved. Local environment for difference function, this one AB, that is stored differently. So if you print A inside diff function, 100 will be printed. If you try to print A inside some function, 5 will get printed. If you try to print A in the main program, 10 will get printed. So wherever you give the print command, first it will follow the LEGB rule. In that place, whatever is the variable available, it will print it. If it is not available in the local area, then global variable will get printed. Okay. So the rule that is followed for scope of a variable is LEGB rule. L stands for local, G stands for global. Local cannot be used outside the function, but global can be used anywhere inside the function. But local variable is always given the first preference. So when you have two variables A here as well as inside the function, try to print A inside the function, the local value will only get printed, not the global one. Okay. I will make it clear. Here I have A is equal to 10. Here I have A is equal to 100. When I run this program, when print A is encountered, actually the local value will only get printed. Here when you print A, there is no local variable called A, so it will print the global variable. So if local is available inside a function, that is given first preference. If local is not available in the name of A, then global value is taken. Okay. See, in the first program, 10 is the local value. Second one function, 100 is the global value because local is not available. Hope you understood the concept of local and global variables. So this is an example, variable in global scope but not in local. So I'm trying to print num1 inside a function, but it will not cause any error. It will consider this num1 from the global one. Look at this example, def high x is equal to 10 and print x. And here I have given 4 main lines, x is equal to 25. So I have given the same x inside the function as well as outside the function. Now, when I say print x inside the function, 15 will get printed. When I print x outside the function, 25 will get printed. So what is the order of printing? What will be the output of this program? First, x is assigned 25. Print x means 25 will get printed. Then high is called, high function is executed. X is assigned 15, that is a different x value. Print x, which means 15 will get printed. Now function gets over, again come back to the main program. Again I'm printing x. But this x refers to what? The global value. Why? Because local values cannot be used outside the function. So the output of this program will be 25, 15, 25. So you will be given a question like this. Write the output of this code. You should be able to write. Now look at this. Suppose you want to change the global value itself for any case. You need not use the separate variable. I want to use the global value itself. In that case, you should use the keyword global. See, I will show you the program. Def fun. Now a is equal to 10 and I give a is equal to 100, call the function, then print a. Now let us see what happens. See, a is assigned a value 100, then function is called, a is assigned a value 10. This a is different and this a is different. So when you try to print a, the global value 100 will get printed. See, 100 gets printed. But inside the function, for any purpose, if I want to change this a itself, then you can say global a. What do you mean by that? You want to access this global variable a. I am directly accessing this value and not a separate one. You are intimating the computer not to allocate a separate area for this a. This and this are the same. I want to use the global variable. Now in this case, this a value is changed as 10. So what will be the output of print a? 10 will get printed on the screen. See, before calling this function, 100 will be printed. Look at this. First 100 will get printed. Once I enter the function, I am changing the value of the global a. So it changes this as 10. So 100 and 10 will be the answer of this code now. Okay. Now, when you pass a mutable value to a function, what do you mean by a mutable data type? Say you are passing a list. I will show you an example. This example I will type and show you. Suppose you pass a list L1. Let us see what happens. L1 dot append of 3. I am just appending something. Here I will assign L1 equal to 1 comma 2. There is a list called L1 which has 1 comma 2. Then I am calling the function with L1 and trying to print L1. Now when you append a value 3, what happens? It is a mutable data type. So this L1 and this L1 are not treated as separate variables. It creates a shallow copy. Why a shallow copy is created? Because it is a mutable data type. So when you append a value 3, it is actually adding the value 3 in the global variable itself. This happens because it is a mutable data type. So when you print L1, 1 comma 2 comma 3 will get printed. See, to avoid this, suppose you wish that this L1 should not get disturbed. Then before using it, create a copy of it and then change it. See now what happens. Now 1 comma 2 is getting printed. This 3 does not affect the global variable. So when a list is being passed, it is created as a shallow copy, and when you append, when you add or edit anything in a list, it directly affects the list given in the main program. But when you create a copy of it, here a deep copy or a true copy is created. So L1 does not get disturbed. Okay, this is the concept of passing a mutable type to a function. Okay, so a deep copy, use dot copy function, create a new copy of a list and append an element to that. In that case, the program will be executed properly. So that's all. We come to the end of this session. In the next video, you will learn how to write programs using user-defined functions. Just now we saw how to write a function to find sum of numbers, simple interest. So we will see some example of programs using user-defined functions. Thank you.